How do you begin to summarize 100 years of God doing amazing things into one 15-minute video? Months ago, I was tasked with doing just that, and even the thought of getting started was overwhelming. It quickly became apparent that this would be no easy task. I was not prepared for the rabbit hole that making this video would take me on. I hope you enjoy hearing the stories of God at work through the eyes of some of our members. Stories of history in the making, of lives being transformed, all because someone answered the call to reach lost people for Jesus. I wish I could have tracked down every detail, every nuance, every time someone could clearly see God at work here at Eastview, but there are hours of video represented here in this short film. This is just a snapshot of God's handiwork. It doesn't even come close to showing what He's done through the years. So here's my attempt at capturing something bigger than all of us.
Well, I love the history of Eastview Wesleyan Church because it starts in Jonesboro, and Reverend Lauren Van Matter was deeply concerned about Gas City, which had been renamed. It used to be Harrisburg, and they discovered gas, and men started coming in droves from the East Coast, as many as 2,000 men living in tents on the north side of Gas City. Gas City had a tent city, and what an amazing thing. Lots and lots of bars, and from what I read, there were only 3 churches. And so Reverend Van Matter decided to have a tent meeting, and they had a few people get saved. The tent meeting became fairly popular, and I don't know how many tent meetings they had, but they decided to start having meetings in the Avalon Hotel. Now, the Avalon was located where Circle K is now, at the corner of Main and 3rd Street. On December the 9th, when they officially opened, they had 10 new converts and 4 individuals who had obtained heart purity who got sanctified. What an exciting time. So the mission grew, and so on September the 9th, 1924, the church was officially organized with 16 members. Not long after that, in 1925, Reverend Van Matter left Jonesboro and became the full-time pastor of the church in Gas City. And they purchased a lot at 201 East North A Street.
So I started coming here when I was about 5 years old, and Reverend Bob Anderson and his wife Ruth and their family moved here. And when they took over as when he took over as the pastor, he had a son and a daughter, David and Rebecca, and David ended up becoming my best friend. And we walked in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, we'd walk down to West School back every day, down and back, and then we would stay over at the parsonage, and because Mom and Dad was working, so they were gone a lot, so I would stay over there with them, and then Ruth would make us something to eat. And then being best friends with David, so always being close to his mom and dad over there, and they were always, I had all kinds of questions. I mean, they probably got tired of it, but but they took the time, and I knew they cared, and they answered every question I ever had. Naomi Appleman was my Sunday school teacher. We had, our classes were down in the basement. This basement was dug later after the original structure was built, but I remember her having us memorize the books of the New Testament, but I thought, I'll never memorize that. But she put it in a song form, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, 3 John, Jude, and Revelation. And that's how I learned it. So it always stuck in my mind because of that song, and it was all because of Naomi Appleman. I was just so impressed by how, because Pastor Bob Anderson, like he didn't go by a rigid set itinerary. Like he start preaching and have a message intended, but then the Holy Spirit just moved and people would start running around the church. My Aunt Tass was one of them. She had her tambourine, was playing her tambourine, and I don't know, but he didn't want to interfere when the Spirit moved. My dad was having surgery in Fort Wayne, at a hospital in Fort Wayne, so my mom said, "You're the oldest," was there 7 kids. She said, "You're the oldest, so you're in charge," and I was 16. So thank the Lord, my sister, it was in the summer, my sister slept on the couch downstairs. Well, I slept upstairs where the bedrooms were, and then I heard this blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night. And I woke up, I was startled, and I ran downstairs, and it was on fire, the front room. So I started yelling at her to get out. So I went back upstairs, got all my brothers and sisters out, and then I thought, I got to call the fire department, which I never should have went back in. But I did, and the downstairs phone wasn't working, so I ran back upstairs. And then I was so nervous I couldn't think of my address. I just said, we're out here. It's the Swanners, and they go, "We know where you're at. Hang up and get out." And I barely made it back out because I didn't realize how far or how fast the fire and smoke was progressing. And I just remember feeling my way down the stairs. I was like, "Lord, please let me make it." I didn't know if I was going to make it back out. And all my brothers and sisters made it out too. But this is the truth. Some people don't believe this, it's not in church, but everything in that house was gutted and everything burned except Mom's thick, large print Bible. It was on a table and the fire burned around it, but it never touched it. It never singed it, nothing. But everything else was completely gone. And then it took a while for the insurance to kick in, to help it, to pay us anything. So Eastview Wesleyan, they had a couple ladies at the church that did clothing drives, and so because all we had was the clothes on our backs, that was it. They got us clothes, brought us food. It was just unbelievable everything that the Eastview Wesleyan did for us. The Lord has saved my life so many times, and I think He saved it because He wanted me to go on and be able to save people through the fire service, through the fire department.
My name is Ted Herring, and I was born here in Gas City, and I was born on 12/29/29, and I've been here at the church now for 60 years. I started coming here in 63, and I went to the altar and gave my heart to the Lord in Father's Day, 1964. And 1 week after that, I started driving the Sunday school bus. And a week after that, I was appointed building fund treasurer, and I ended up with about 5 positions all at one time. Custodian, head of the bus ministry, and I was on the board, local church board, the trustee board. I was the still building fund treasurer, and started talking about getting more land to build on to expand our church. We finally ended up with 3 acres here on the corner. During the bus ministry, most of the kids called me Uncle Ted. One week, I brought on that 55-passenger school bus. There was 100 of us on that bus, and I told the pastor that day that I wasn't going to do that anymore because of the law overloading the bus, that I'd have to have another bus. And that, when he got through preaching that Sunday, he got up and said we needed donations to get another bus, and we, by the end of the night service, we had $2,000. So we went to Silver Lake at Sterling Ford, I believe it was, and we bought a 72 Dodge 66 passenger bus. When Pastor Mark came back to take off the position of lead pastor, we probably owed on the property a new CLC and all of that. We probably owed, I think, a little over $100,000. Anyway, Dave Huffman got a plan together, and it went real well. And I went with the staff down to pay the mortgage off at Indianapolis in 1 year.
So I was here 13 years as youth pastor, and God called us to plant a church in Macon, Georgia. And we were there for 12 years. And while working on a youth convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Lord gave me a dream about coming back to Eastview. On Wednesday morning, I called Rhonda, and I said, "You're never going to believe what I just dreamed." And she said, "Let me tell you my dream first." She said, "I just told Kai that I had this really strange dream about going back to Eastview." We both dreamed about coming back to Eastview on the same night, even though we were in different states. So in 2009, I came back to Eastview and was able to serve here for 13 years. After the church voted and I said yes, Noah called and asked if he could come and work for me as assistant pastor. And I told Noah that our financial situation was horrible at Eastview and that I had to get the finances of the church taken care of before I could hire anybody. So I told him no. He then called me back and said, "What if I come to work for free?" And I said, "Pastor Noah, that would be awesome. However, I have found that every time an ordained pastor says they want to come to work for free, it's generally so that they can keep their credentials or something, and they don't really work that much. So no, I don't want to put you in that kind of a precarious situation. It would also be difficult for your marriage." Anyway, with all the phone calls, even he had his wife call me. Pastor Noah, that first year, worked more than 20 hours a week for free while he worked a full-time job at the Walmart distribution center. He later became full-time assistant pastor, and it didn't matter whether I asked him to speak to the youth or to run the children's ministry or to lead worship or to... He had to do everything in the church. So he has experience in all kinds of things, and he was willing to do whatever it took.
So some of my earliest memories is obviously as a child being in the children's ministry, and I remember Lel Plank and the children's programs, and we would sing, "I am a promise, I am a possibility, I am a promise" with a capital P. There was an incident in my life where I went swimming in the public pool, and I had jumped in and forgot to put my life jacket back on. I was a little guy, and so I jumped in the deep end, and I thought I was big enough to swim, and I couldn't swim. And I remember trying to grab the edge to try to pull me up, and then right before I felt like, oh, I'm done for, my dad reached in and pulled me up out of the water and saved me. But I remember in Bob Appleman's class, it was my brother and I remember him asking the question, are you saved? Or have you been saved before? And I said, yes, I've been saved. And so I started to tell him that story about me drowning in the water. And as a little kid, not understanding that he was talking about my soul. And so I thought that was a memory that I always cherish. And I'm thankful that both of the stories do go together, because there's times where we're drowning in our sin, we're drowning in our sin, and God pulls us out when we reach up for him. But there's a lot of people in this church has played a big part in my development, and I thank the Lord for them. And it hasn't been until here recently that the Lord's made that more, has revealed that to me. Because if Eastview wasn't a church that cared about the lost, they would have never took in the Farmer family with Kevin and Julie Farmer and their 3 kids. Dave and Susie were coming here, and they're Susie's mom and dad, Flay and Margie Lehman, who are long members of the church, who are now celebrating in heaven. They were coming here, and so my mom and dad came because they came. And my parents were still a little rough around the edges, as anybody is, and Pastor Westerfer was the pastor here, and he didn't give up on them. He led my dad to the Lord. And if they wouldn't have showed them the love of Christ which led them to Jesus, then I don't know where I'd be at today. And so I want to say thank you for accepting my family, because it plays a huge part in my life and my development of where I'm at today. Eastview Wesleyan Church. Wow, 100 years. And that is such an amazing thing that God has been able to bless us with. There's not very many churches that can say that they've been around for 100 years. And it's because we're doing something right, and that is we are relying on God. We're saying Jesus Christ is the solid rock, and there's nothing that this world's going to do that's going to make us step off that rock. I thank you for being here today. God's got a lot of awesome things in store here at Eastview. In 100 years, may people be able to look back at this very old video and say, I am so thankful that they were faithful to the calling that God had placed on their heart, because without their faithfulness, we wouldn't be here today. And so, church, I hope you're ready to go and make a difference, because God is calling us. We are his plan A. Are you ready to go? Church, I am. So let's go.